for match points. 4. Coco Gauff, world number 4, the reigning U.S. Open champion, one of the most mentally composed players on the WTA Tour, had handed Elina Svitolina 4 separate chances to close out that second set and walk into the Dubai final. And Svitolina couldn't take a single one. In any other story, that's where the hero breaks. That's where the veteran folds under the weight of a squandered opportunity, where the younger, hungrier champion senses blood and finishes the job. That's the script tennis has followed 1,000 times before. But Elina Svitolina didn't read that script. Instead, she went out and won the third set 6-4 anyway. Welcome to the WTA Insider. I'm your host, and today we are breaking down one of the most psychologically complex matches of the 2026 season so far. A 3-hour, 3-minute war between two generations of women's tennis that ended with a scoreline of 6-4. 6-7, 13-15. 6-4 in favor of the Ukrainian warrior. Let's set the stage properly, because this result deserves context. Going into the semifinal in Dubai, Coco Gauff was a clear favorite. She's 21 years old, ranked 4th in the world, and she had been playing some of the most controlled, aggressive tennis of her career through the draw. The narrative was practically writing itself. An All-American final between Gauff and Jessica Pegula. Two players who know each other's games inside out, who had already delivered fireworks at the Australian Open just weeks prior. Svitolina, she was a respected challenger, the gritty veteran, the woman who makes every match uncomfortable, but surely not someone who's going to go 3 sets with Coco Gauff and come out on top, right? Wrong. And what makes this result so compelling isn't just that Svitolina won, it's how she won. It's the psychological architecture of this match, the tactical adjustments, the brutal emotional swings, and ultimately, what it says about a 31-year-old woman who has survived more than most athletes could imagine, stepping back onto one of her favorite courts in the world and reminding everyone exactly who she is. This isn't just a match recap. This is a masterclass in resilience, read through a tactical and human lens. Because here's the question that should be bouncing around your head right now. How do you lose 4 match points in a tiebreak that goes to 13-15 and still find the mental clarity to win a deciding set? That answer is what we're here to unpack. All right, let's get into the chess match, because that's exactly what this was. From the very first game of this match, Svitolina made her tactical intention crystal clear. She was not going to let Coco Gauff dictate the pace. And if you know anything about how Gauff operates, you understand why that decision was so critical. Gauff's game in 2025 and into 2026 has evolved significantly. She's no longer just a baseline grinder who wins on consistency and mental toughness. She's become a genuine shot maker. Her forehand has more shape, more intent, more venom on it than it did even 18 months ago. Her serve, which was a liability early in her career, has quietly become a weapon. And perhaps most dangerously, she's learned how to construct points, to build pressure systematically, push her opponent wider and wider, and then finish with an inside-out forehand winner that leaves you with no answer. That is the Gauff blueprint. And Svitolina had clearly studied it. So what did Svitolina do? She went after the backhand, relentlessly. Now, Gauff's backhand is not a weakness by any conventional standard, but it is a shot that, under extreme sustained pressure, produces the most unforced errors. Svitolina recognized that if she could keep redirecting play toward Gauff's backhand side, using a heavy, high-kicking topspin to push her deep behind the baseline, she could limit the angles available for Gauff's forehand to do damage. Hold on. Rewind that point for a second. This is subtle but important. Svitolina wasn't just targeting the backhand. She was neutralizing the forehand by proxy. By keeping the ball deep to Gauff's backhand corner, she was functionally cutting off the court and preventing Gauff from running around to her dominant wing. That is elite-level tactical thinking. That is the kind of pattern recognition that takes a decade of professional experience to weaponize consistently. The first set reflects this perfectly. Svitolina took it 6-4, largely because she outconstructed Gauff. The error count on Gauff's side was higher than you'd expect from a player of her caliber, and that was by design, not accident. But here's where it gets interesting. Gauff adjusts. She always adjusts. In the second set, she started taking the ball earlier, shortening her backswing, and redirecting Svitolina's heavy topspin rather than trying to absorb and regenerate from behind the baseline. It disrupted Svitolina's rhythm just enough. Gauff started winning more free points on serve. Her first serve percentage climbed. And suddenly, the match that Svitolina had been controlling felt like it was slipping. The second set went to a tiebreak. And what a tiebreak it was. 13-15. Let that number sit with you for a moment. That is not a tiebreak. That is a psychological gauntlet. Svitolina had four match points at 6-5, at 7-6, at 8-7, and again at 9-8 in that tiebreak. Each time, Gauff found a way. A precise serve down the tee. A forehand winner cross court that had no right to land in. A defensive lob under pressure that somehow clipped the baseline. Was that a choke from Svitolina, or simply Gauff playing the best tennis of her life at the most critical moments? Drop your take in the comments, because I watched this tiebreak twice, and I genuinely believe the answer is more complicated than it first appears. Here's my read. It wasn't a choke, not in the traditional sense. Svitolina's shot selection on those match points was largely sound. Gauff simply elevated. She hit winners that, on any other point in the match, she might not have attempted. That's what great champions do under existential pressure. They access something that isn't available to them at 4-3 in the first set. But here is the tactical story of the third set. And this is what separates Svitolina from almost any other player on tour at this stage of her career. After losing that tiebreak 13-15, after having 4 match points evaporate, Svitolina came out in the third set and did not panic. She did not abandon her game plan. She did not start swinging for low percentage winners trying to recapture momentum. She went back to the blueprint. Heavy topspin to the backhand, high contact point, deep in the court, forcing Gauff to play defense. And critically, Gauff had spent enormous emotional and physical energy winning that tiebreak. The adrenaline spike that carried her through 13-15 was, by the third set, starting to cost her something. Her movement was a fraction slower. Her shot tolerance, the ability to sustain long, grinding exchanges, dropped noticeably. Svitolina, who builds matches like a marathon runner rather than a sprinter, was fresher in the moments that mattered most. The 6-4 third set, on paper, looks clean. But watch the match, and you'll see it was anything but. Every single service game was a battle. Svitolina had earned every point, and she did. That right there is the tactical story of this match. Discipline, pattern recognition, the refusal to deviate from a plan that was working, even when the scoreboard was screaming at her to change something. But tactics only explain so much, because what happened on that court in Dubai wasn't just about forehands and tie breaks. It was about something far more personal. And that's where we're going next. Let me ask you something that has nothing to do with tennis. Imagine you are 28 years old. You are ranked inside the top 10 in the world in your profession. You are at the absolute peak of your powers. And then the world you live in, literally, physically, the country you call home, is torn apart by war. Not a metaphor, not a difficult season. War. That is a reality Elina Svitolina has been navigating since February 2022, when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And to understand what we witnessed in Dubai on Saturday, you cannot separate the player from that context. You simply cannot. Because Svitolina has never let you forget where she comes from. She has worn the Ukrainian flag on her sleeve, again, not metaphorically, literally, throughout this entire period. She has refused to shake hands with Russian and Belarusian opponents in protest. She has donated prize money to the Ukrainian army. She has used every press conference, every post-match interview, every platform tennis has given her to keep the conversation about her country alive in a sports world that sometimes has a very short memory. And she has done all of this while also being a professional athlete, a wife, a mother, Her daughter Sky was born in 2022, right in the middle of the invasion, and now, at 31 years old, a player trying to reclaim her place among the elite of women's tennis. That is an extraordinary weight to carry onto a tennis court every single day. Here's what makes the Dubai story even more layered. This tournament is not just any tournament for Svitolina. This is her tournament. She won back-to-back titles here in 2017 and 2018. Dubai is where, for 2 consecutive years, she was untouchable, the best player in the world on that surface, in that atmosphere, with that crowd. It was a proving ground for a version of Elina Svitolina that felt genuinely invincible. And then life happened. Injuries, the pandemic, marriage to French tennis player Gaël Monfils, pregnancy, war, a ranking that slipped well outside the top 100 during her maternity leave, and the chaos of the invasion, a slow, grinding climb back toward relevance that has taken years of patience and pain. She returned to the tour in 2023 and immediately showed flashes of her best tennis, reaching the Wimbledon semifinal that year in one of the most emotionally charged runs the championships had seen in years. The crowd at center court understood what they were watching. This wasn't just tennis. It was something else, something harder to name. But consistency has been elusive since then. The ranking has fluctuated. The results have been uneven. And there have been moments, quiet moments, you suspect, away from the cameras, where even someone as mentally strong as Svitolina must have wondered how much longer she could sustain this, how much longer the sacrifice was worth it. And then she steps on the court in Dubai, the place where she was once the queen, against one of the best players in the world. 3 hours, 3 minutes, for match points lost in a tiebreak that went to 13-15. And she won anyway. I was playing like there is no tomorrow. Just try and put all the effort in. That quote, sit with that quote for a moment, like there is no tomorrow. For most athletes, that's a figure of speech. A cliche you pull out in a post-match press conference when you need something quotable. But when Elina Svitolina says it, given everything she has lived through, given the country she represents and the sacrifices she has made, those words carry a different gravity entirely. She is not speaking poetically. She is speaking from lived experience of what it actually means to exist in a world where tomorrow is not guaranteed. That is the human story behind the scoreline. That is why a 6-4, 6-7, 6-4 victory over Coco Gauff in a tournament semifinal feels like it means more than a semifinal probably should. And here is the micro question I want you to sit with heading into the next section, because this matters enormously for what comes next. Can that kind of motivation, that deep, almost existential sense of purpose, actually be a competitive advantage on a tennis court? Or does the emotional weight eventually become too heavy to carry? Because Svitolina now has one more match to answer that question. A final against Jessica Pegula, a player who, by almost any metric, is playing the best tennis of her life right now. And that the ripple effects of this result, what it means for the rankings for the final and for the broader WTA landscape, is exactly what we're getting into next. All right, let's zoom out. Because as extraordinary as Svitolina's story is, and as emotionally compelling as that semifinal was, results have consequences. Rankings shift, draws reshape, narratives that seem settled suddenly crack open again. And this result in Dubai sends ripples through the WTA Tour in ways that are worth examining carefully. Let's start with the most immediate ripple, the final itself. Jessica Pegula versus Elina Svitolina. On paper, this looks like a mismatch. Pegula is currently ranked number 3 in the world. She moved up after Sabalenka's recent scheduling decisions, and she has played with the kind of quiet, relentless confidence that has defined her game since a remarkable run at the US Open and beyond. She is consistent to the point of being almost machine-like in her baseline exchanges. She rarely gifts opponents free points. Her serve is reliable. Her return game is arguably the best on the WTA Tour right now. And she got to the final the hard way too. Coming back from a disastrous 1-6 opening set loss against compatriot Amanda Anisimova, fighting through what must have been an uncomfortable psychological reset, and eventually winning 1-6, 6-4, 6-3. That kind of comeback performance tells you something important about Pegula's mental architecture. She doesn't panic. She recalibrates. But here's what makes this final genuinely unpredictable. Svitolina just played 3 hours and 3 minutes of the most emotionally and physically demanding tennis of her recent career. She burned through reserves, emotional, physical, tactical. That would have broken most players. The conventional wisdom says that she'd be at disadvantage heading into a final, potentially with limited recovery time. But hold on, is conventional wisdom actually applicable to Elina Svitolina right now? Because here is a pattern worth noting. Svitolina's best tennis in this late chapter of her career has consistently come in the aftermath of adversity rather than in spite of it. Her Wimbledon 2023 run came after months of uncertainty and emotional turbulence. Her best performances seem to emerge not when conditions are comfortable, but when the stakes are existential. That is a psychological profile that defies normal fatigue logic. And Pegula, for all her excellence, has not yet proven she can consistently handle opponents who bring that kind of irrational, almost defiant resilience to court. That is the first ripple. The final itself is far less predictable than the rankings suggest. Now, let's talk about Coco Gauff, because this loss matters for her too, perhaps more than the scoreline implies. Gauff came into Dubai having already won the Australian Open doubles title and showing the kind of form that had people genuinely discussing whether 2026 could be the year she claims multiple Grand Slams. That conversation isn't dead. One semifinal loss doesn't erase a top 4 ranking in a game that is clearly trending upward, but it does introduce a question mark that wasn't there before. Gauff had 4 match points in that tiebreak. She couldn't close. Now, to be absolutely clear, losing a tiebreak 13-15 after saving 4 match points is not evidence of a mental fragility problem. If anything, saving 4 match points is evidence of mental strength. But the broader pattern, the inability to convert in the moments that separate semifinalists from finalists, is something her coaching team will be examining closely heading into the hard-court swing and eventually the clay season. The micro question here is this: is Gauff's game complete enough to win a Grand Slam this year, or is there still a ceiling she hasn't broken through yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is genuinely one of the most debated questions in women's tennis right now. Let's zoom out even further, because Dubai doesn't exist in isolation. The WTA hard-court swing is building toward Indian Wells, one of the most prestigious tournaments on the calendar, a mandatory event for the top players, and a genuine Grand Slam dress rehearsal in terms of draw depth and court conditions. The results coming out of Dubai and Doha are going to shape seedings, momentum, and confidence levels heading into Indian Wells in a significant way. Svitolina reaching the Dubai final and potentially winning it would represent a ranking climb that pushes her back into serious consideration for top-seeded status at future events. More importantly, it confirms that she is not a feel-good story. She is a genuine threat, and that changes how opponents prepare for her. That changes the psychological dynamic in a draw. And then there's the wild card in all of this, Venus Williams. The announcement that the 45-year-old 7-time Grand Slam champion has been awarded a wild card into Indian Wells for both singles and doubles is, depending on your perspective, either a beautiful celebration of tennis history or a fascinating wild card, pun intended, that adds an unpredictable emotional narrative to a tournament that was already going to be compelling. Venus at Indian Wells carries its own enormous historical weight. Her and Serena famously avoided the tournament for years, following the 2001 booing incident involving their father. Venus's return, her continued presence on tour at 45, speaks to the same kind of defiant longevity that we're seeing from Svitolina. Different context, same refusal to let the story end on anyone else's terms. The WTA Tour heading into Indian Wells is shaping up to be genuinely fascinating. You have Pegula in dominant form. You have Gauff hungry to prove a point. You have Svitolina riding a wave of momentum and purpose. You have Sabalenka lurking as always. And now you have Venus adding a layer of theater that only she can provide. Which brings us to the only question that really matters now. What happens next? What does this all mean for Svitolina, for the Dubai final, for the rest of the season? That's where we're going for the final part. And I promise you, my prediction for this final might surprise you. Let me tell you something that I think gets lost in the noise of rankings and statistics and draw projections. Tennis, at its highest level, is not decided by who is better on paper. It is decided by who wants it more in the moments where wanting it is the only thing left. And right now, in this specific week, on this specific court, in this specific chapter of her life, I genuinely believe Elina Svitolina wants it more than anyone else in that draw. That is not a romantic notion. That is not me getting swept up in compelling backstory and letting emotion override analysis. I have spent the last 4 parts of this video breaking down the tactical evidence, the psychological profile, the historical context, and the competitive landscape. And when I stack all of it together, my conclusion is this: Elina Svitolina wins the Dubai final. Let me tell you exactly why. Jessica Pegula is an outstanding tennis player. She is consistent, composed, and battle-tested. Her comeback against Anisimova proved she can reset mentally after a bad start. Those are genuine qualities. But Pegula's game, for all its excellence, is built on a foundation of attrition. She wins by being more consistent than you, by making fewer errors, by outlasting you in exchanges until you crack. That blueprint works brilliantly against players who are trying to avoid losing. It works considerably less well against a player who is trying to win something. And that distinction, subtle as it sounds, is everything in a one-match final. Svitolina is not coming into this final trying to protect a ranking. She is not coming in trying to validate a season or meet an expectation. She is coming in with the freedom of someone who has already exceeded what most people thought was possible this week. She is playing, in her own words, like there is no tomorrow, and that psychological state, that liberated, almost reckless commitment to the moment, is extraordinarily difficult to game plan against. Here's what I expect tactically. Svitolina will go after Pegula's backhand with the same heavy topspin approach she used against Gauff, but she will need to be more aggressive with her net approaches, because Pegula's backhand is more reliable under pressure than Gauff's. The key variable will be Svitolina's serve. If she can hold serve comfortably and avoid giving Pegula cheap breakpoint opportunities, she controls the rhythm of the match. If her serve wavers, which it did at moments against Gauff, Pegula will construct pressure so efficiently and so patiently that Svitolina could find herself in a very long, very difficult battle of attrition that favors the American. My prediction: it goes 3 sets. It is close throughout, and Svitolina wins in a deciding set that comes down to 3 or 4 pivotal points. The kind of points that, a week ago, she might not have found a way to win, but she will find a way, because that is what this version of Elina Svitolina does. Now, here is my broader verdict on what this week means, beyond the trophy, beyond the ranking points, beyond the headlines. We are watching something rare in professional sport. We are watching an athlete refuse to let circumstance define the ceiling of what is possible. Svitolina could have used the war, the pregnancy, the years of ranking decline, the emotional weight of representing a nation under siege. She could have used any one of those things as a reason to quietly step back, to compete without expectation, to be present on tour without truly threatening anyone. Instead, she is here, in a final, having just beaten the 4th best player in the world in a 3-hour epic, at 31 years old, on the court where she was once unbeatable, playing like there is no tomorrow. And here's my final thought, the one I want to leave you with. Sport has a way of offering us metaphors when we need them most. And in a world that can feel overwhelmingly chaotic and heavy, there is something quietly powerful about watching a woman from Ukraine step onto a tennis court in Dubai, carry everything she carries, lose 4 match points in a tiebreak that went to 13-15 and win anyway, not because the universe owed her a victory, not because the story demanded a happy ending, but because she refused to stop competing for it. That is why we watch tennis. Not just for the forehands and the tiebreaks and the rankings, but for the moments when a human being shows us, in the clearest possible terms, what it looks like to keep going. Elina Svitolina is keeping going, and personally, I cannot wait to see how this chapter ends. If this breakdown gave you a new way to see this match, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. Subscribe if you want this level of WTA analysis every single week. And drop your prediction for the Dubai final in the comments. Does Svitolina complete the fairy tale, or does Pegula's consistency prove too much to handle? I'm your host. This has been the WTA Insider, and I'll see you in the next one.